It's a warm winter's day south of Johannesburg. A lone grass cutter is hacking his way through dry reeds in an isolated stretch of veldt. He earns his money this way, selling off the dry grass for thatching. Hidden in the golden blades, a young woman's body lies naked, exposed to the harsh July sun. But the heat cannot take away the chill he feels when he realizes she is dead. That afternoon, police swarm the area and cordon off the crime scene. The young woman is almost immediately identified as 21-year-old Leigh Matthews.
Just come from the police department and they've advised us that they found our daughter. We're devastated by the news.
On Friday morning of the 9th of July, BCom student Leigh Matthews is driving to Bond University in the upmarket district of Sandton. The night before, she'd celebrated her 21st birthday. All she has to do is attend one lecture that morning and then set her mind to preparing for her big party the following evening. 70 guests would join her in fancy dress. The theme, Pirates of the Caribbean. A story about a girl who is kidnapped by pirates. Leigh attends her law lecture. At 10 a.m. she leaves towards the car park. And that's the last time her classmates see her. Close friend and fellow student Mark Hurwitz usually walks with Leigh to her car, but he has an appointment across the campus. Today, she goes alone. A few minutes later, Leigh's seen talking to a man in the car park. And then, Leigh disappears. It isn't unusual when Leigh's mother, Sharon, decides to drop by the university to surprise her and pick up her credit card. Sharon and Leigh are very close.
I had to go and get stuff for the party. And I kept on SMSing her and I didn't get a reply. And then I thought I'd phone her and her phone was off, and she never leaves her phone off. She'll put it on silent.
Hi, Leigh, it's Ma. I'm waiting out in the parking lot at the moment for you. I guess you're running a little bit late, but I'll see you in a little bit. Bye.
I got panicky and I looked around the campus and I couldn't see her car, and I thought maybe I'm overreacting. And I phoned my husband and he was in the area. And he came and had a look. He went into the campus to see if she was in class.
Sharon searches for Leigh's car, but can't see it anywhere. On such a small campus, it shouldn't be hard to find. She becomes increasingly worried when she calls Leigh's phone again, and this time it rings, but there is no answer. So she keeps calling.
I phoned her phone again.
Leigh?
I've kidnapped your daughter.
I thought he was joking.
I'm Libyan, and I've done this before.
Who is this?
And I'll kill her if you don't bring me 300,000 rand, okay? And if you involve the cops, I will kill your daughter.
Hello?
Their world as they know it is about to change forever.
One of the most important things in a kidnapping is target selection, is choosing who you're going to kidnap. So normally you look for someone, firstly, who will have access to the money that you need. You'll make sure it's someone that's not going to be too difficult to kidnap, someone who's not too security aware or anything like that. And also you will try to find someone who you don't know.
Bob Nichols is in the business of international crime prevention. To avert kidnappings, he draws on case studies when assessing what motivates these criminals. Statistically, kidnapping is not a common crime in South Africa, particularly abduction for ransom.
It's very difficult to know what made Leigh Matthews a target. It's not as though the Matthews family are particularly opulent. I mean, they seem like a fairly normal family, relatively well off, but not extravagantly so.
The kidnapper explicitly tells the Matthews not to contact the police.
I mean what I say. Do not involve the cops.
Rob, stressed and fearing for his daughter's life, has nowhere to turn. He hires a firm of private detectives.
When they got the ransom call, Rob Matthews approached a security company who advised him to contact the police, which in the vast majority of cases is the right thing to do. It's a very difficult decision to make to call the police when you've been told not to, because you've been told that if you call the police, harm is going to come to your loved one that I've kidnapped.
For Rob and Sharon, it now becomes a waiting game. Late into the afternoon on that fateful Friday, they sit anticipating the kidnapper's next call.
It's okay, he'll call.
Police advised Rob to negotiate a different deal.
I have a problem. I can't do 300,000 Rand at such short notice, but I can do 50.
50,000 will do.
The primary objective of the police in a kidnapping, primary objective is to get the victim back. Then, to try to catch the kidnappers.
Let me speak to my daughter, please.
But Leigh's parents need to know that she is still alive. The negotiators insist that the family gets proof of life. They persuade the kidnapper to put her on the phone.
Tell them not to involve the cops, or I will kill you.
Dad, please do everything he says or he will shoot me.
Everything's going to be fine. We're going to sort the money out. We'll see you soon, my love.
If you ever want to see your daughter alive again, do as I say.
Reassured that their daughter is still alive, the drop-off for the money is arranged for that night.
I want you to drop the money off at the Grasmere Plaza at 8 o'clock.
Grasmere Plaza, in1. Okay, yes, yeah, I know where that is. At the off-ramp, 8 o'clock.
Frantically, Rob Matthews heads towards the south of Johannesburg. A policeman is hiding in the back of his car. But just as he nears his destination, Rob panics.
Officer, I'm not comfortable. I don't want to put my daughter in danger. Just please get out.
Rob drives towards the drop-off point, but in his frenzy, he misses the actual spot. Instantly, the kidnapper is on the line.
Hello?
The fuck do you think you're going? Get back to the spot. I'm going to kill your daughter.
I've just turned around. I'm coming back. Okay, I'm on the way.
Fear clouds Rob's mind.
I will come and I will knock on your window.
Remember the signal. Flash the lights 3 times and then wait. Rob sticks to his side of the deal.
Go!
Kidnapping, it's a strange crime because there's a kind of an element almost of trust. Is that I've got to trust that when I pay that money, I'm going to get the person back again.
That's all that Rob can do. Trust that the man on the other side of the phone will stick to his word and release his daughter unharmed. But as the hours wear on, the silence becomes deafening. Rob tries to call Leigh many times, but her phone has been switched off.
Hi, this is Leigh. I'm not here right now, but if you leave your name and number, I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks.
Contact has been severed. By the morning, hopes of getting 21-year-old kidnapped victim Leigh Matthews back are beginning to fade. By Saturday afternoon, the South African police have already set up a 10-man special task team, and the hunt for Leigh Matthews is launched. Rob and Sharon make a critical decision. They engage with the media. On television, a father's heartbroken plea to the kidnappers to release his daughter strikes a chord with the entire nation.
Please give us some indication as to where we can get my daughter. I really would like to get her back safely and carry on with our lives and give her the opportunity of growing her career, which I think she has a promising opportunity, and being a spirited part of the community. Please give her back to us.
I think we're always hopeful to make a breakthrough. I think our main target, and I think that one need to emphasize, is the fact to get the victim alive. And I think that is our main aim. Apart from any other investigations or any other demands or whatsoever, the victim is still a priority.
Leading prosecutor Advocate Zeiss van Zyl recalls how Leigh's disappearance resonated with him, even in his personal life.
Maybe it's a bit of my daughter going to school or to university or to wherever, and then suddenly not being there anymore. It just so happened I also had a 21-year-old blonde daughter at that stage, so in a sense, he touched my heart.
Messages from Nelson Mandela and President Thabo Mbeki were extended to the family.
There was a lot of attention, not only nationally, but internationally, from many countries, and very high up presidents of countries contacted and sent good wishes.
Captain Mike van Aert from the South African Police Service was to play a crucial role in the investigation. He says there are many reasons why this case received so much attention.
The victim is an innocent person, a life ahead of her. How many parents just think back and go like, oh, I got a kid at university. This could have happened to me. So I think it's because people fear these things and they emotionally tied to that. And that's why it's such a big interest.
The days pass, hour upon hour. Will Sharon Matthews ever receive the call that means Leigh is coming home?
Hello?
Not even Leigh's 22-year-old sister Karen is able to console her grief-stricken parents.
But she's holding up better than we are. Better than me anyway. Smell her blankets. And kiss her pictures. Just sit.
A week goes by, and still no word from the kidnappers.
Once the ransom is paid, there was no further contact. So it's not as though he then asked for more money. There was no more communication. After that 50,000 rands was paid, everything went quiet.
The area near the Grasmere Plaza where the drop-off was made is searched thoroughly by the police. Helicopters scour the surrounds, and CCTV footage from the toll gate is scrutinized.
Obviously, the media was used to a great extent. in order to spread the word, and maybe somebody will call in and supply the police with information.
It's been a week since police first entered the investigation into the disappearance of Leigh Matthews. Although the public has been assured that numerous leads are being followed, the police are refusing to release any further information, fearing it might jeopardize the safe return of Leigh.
A reward is offered to anyone who can lead them to the kidnappers. The 24-hour hotline at police headquarters is inundated with calls. But the leads are all dead ends. Even though Rob has been questioned by the police, there is nothing that he can recall that seems to be of any help to the investigation.
I didn't try and remember anything. I just wanted my daughter back. I wasn't trying to remember what people were doing or where they were. I was not even trying to understand that. I was just trying to understand, how do I get my daughter back?
A worn-out Sharon is losing hope.
Your body feels tired. But when you go to bed, you switch off the light and you think, should we have done this? Should we have done that? But hell, the days go by so slowly. The nights are even worse.
The 12 days since Leigh's kidnapping from her university grounds pass by in a blur. A young woman's body is found by a grass cutter in a field near Walkerville. She had been shot 4 times.
She had no clothing on her, and she had been laid out on her back, prostrate, with her hair to one side. Very disturbing scene for me, and I've seen many crime scenes in my life.
The Matthews' worst fears are realized. It is their beloved daughter, Leigh.
Now we were looking for a murderer.
Police search the crime scene for any evidence that will lead to the killers. A vital clue that might be of value is the ring that Leigh had been given on her 21st birthday. She was wearing it on the day she was kidnapped. It was not found on her body. A few weeks go by. Still, no arrests are made. Police reassure the public that Leigh's murderer will be apprehended. With the world's eyes focused on the case, the South African police make a pivotal decision to bring in the big guns of their serious crimes unit. Under the astute command of Super Sleuth Brigadier Piet Beleveld, they hope this team will crack the case.
At that stage, I was working with Brigadier Piet Beleveld, who was my group commander. The case was investigated by other members on the unit, on the Serious Violent Crime Unit of Johannesburg. And it was then given to Brigadier Beleveld to carry on with the investigation. And that is how I initially got involved with the investigation of the case.
Any investigation, especially murder case, is difficult.
Piet Beleveld starts from scratch. His motto, always go back to the scene of the crime. But first he needs to speak to Rob Matthews. Something Rob says gives Piet his first clue. He recounts the angry call the kidnapper made at the time he missed the drop-off. His accent had changed.
Rob Matthews said that he could clearly hear that he was speaking to an Indian male on the phone at the time of the kidnapping.
Get back or I'm going to kill your daughter.
Those are the little mistakes that, when picked up and followed up, lead to the capture of somebody like that. And I think a lot of other things afterwards were discovered, which kind of filled the picture together. You know, the other parts of the puzzle all started to fall together.
Presuming the murderer is of Indian origin is of little assistance to the police. Where would they start to look? But what if he's linked to Leigh in some way? What if they knew each other?
Brigadier Beleveld went to the Bonn University and he checked the class registers and found that there was one Indian male who was also in class with Leigh Matthews, the deceased.
The cell phone records of all the students are analysed, and indeed links are made between the Indian male and Leigh. This was the breakthrough that the police needed to catapult their investigation to the next level. Finally, they had a suspect. Donovan Moodley, a 23-year-old Indian male, had attended Bond University for just 1 month. On the surface, he appears to be an ordinary young man.
Just looking at the campus, and the bell rang while we were there, a few students came out. There's 350 students in that whole university. So you immediately get the impression, but they must have known each other. They must have seen each other often, because it's like a very small school. Everybody come out onto the porch.
One of the strange things about this particular kidnapping to me is that he would choose a victim who would clearly be able to identify him afterwards. That's the first thing to me that makes me think that this was not particularly well organized or well planned. There must have been, even within the university where he chose his victim, there must have been a lot of other people who could have been targeted who wouldn't necessarily have recognized him.
But the cell phone records showed that they'd only spoken to each other once over the phone in the months before.
The cell phone evidence actually led the police to him. And he only used her cell phone for all the communication. And then once his own.
It was this little slip-up of using his own phone once on the night of the kidnapping that cracked the investigation wide open.
It also placed him at the scene where the father of the deceased, Rob Matthews, handed over the money.
So it was firstly clear in what sort of area she had been kept. One could say that within 50, 100 meters, that's 200 meters. There's different masts in the area, and one could see how they were traveling, where a phone was used, that kind of thing.
The cell phones also placed him at certain spots or places, including the hotel he was at the night before, the Formula One hotel.
On further investigation, it is discovered that Donovan Moodley booked into the Formula One hotel 2 nights before Leigh's kidnapping. On the 10th of July, after Leigh's abduction, Moodley checked out. The hotel was 6 kilometers away from Bond University. It appears he had stalked Leigh for a few days before he took her hostage. The calls he made to his friends are also traced through his cell phone.
That was also obviously investigated, and it was found that one of those friends were quite close to the place where the money was handed over.
Yashika Singh, Donovan Moodley's girlfriend, also comes under scrutiny when his cell phone calls are analysed in more detail, especially the activity on the night of the kidnapping.
He was phoning his girlfriend, Yashika, many times, and they had long conversations. And one would then compare it with his phone records of, say, for the 2 months before that. And never at that time of the night, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Donovan Moodley's bank records are examined. They showed 3 large deposits into his credit card and savings account over an 18-day period after Leigh's kidnapping.
They also spent a lot of this money. He actually went to Durban after the incident, where he stayed in a hotel.
After the killing, he actually got engaged to Yashika, took her on quite a lavish trip to Durban, and they had a big party there on a yacht, something like that.
Police even find proof of the payment for his new fiancée Yashika's engagement ring. The 50,000 Rand ransom money could be accounted for to just short of 2,000 Rand. Leigh Matthews had been shot 4 times with a 9mm handgun. Donovan Moodley had a license for such a gun, a 9mm Taurus Parabellum.
And it was found that he also had a firearm, which at that stage matched the spent cartridges.
I think that by choosing in Leigh a person who would recognise Donovan, it made it very difficult for him to release her afterwards. So I think that in many ways, that possibly sealed her fate.
Armed with a mass of evidence, the police are now confident they can arrest Donovan Moodley for the kidnap and murder of Leigh Matthews. The investigation that has spanned across Johannesburg finally leads them to their prime suspect. On the 87th day since Leigh's disappearance, Brigadier Piet Beleveld and his team stationed themselves on a corner near Moodley's house. He lives with his parents. Stephen Moodley, Donovan's father, is a preacher at a church nearby.
We then went to his house in Brackenhurst in Alberton quite early in the morning, and we sat and waited until he left the house with his car.
Okay, get ready, he's coming.
And he was then pulled over on the road and arrested.
Donovan Moodley, please exit the vehicle with your hands raised. Donovan Moodley, you are under arrest for the kidnap and murder of Leigh Matthews. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. And you have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you by the state. What took you guys so long?
What I can remember is, at the time of the arrest, he asked Beleveld, "What took you so long?" Which I found quite interesting. He was expecting something.
He was fully cooperative as from the word-go. First he was a bit surprised, of course, it's understandable.
Donovan Moodley is taken into police custody, where he makes a full confession to Captain van Aert.
I then started taking his statement, and he immediately said he wanted to cooperate, and that he did kidnap her, that he did extort the money, and that he did shoot her and murder her. He appeared to be calm, very calm. He didn't do small talk or whatever. He didn't want coffee or anything like that. He sat and told his story in detail.
I dealt with him yesterday for the whole day, basically. He's intelligent, well-spoken, well-mannered.
But Donovan Moodley's confession poses many questions. He says that on the 9th of July at around 10 a.m., he waited for Leigh Matthews in the car park at Bond University. He approached her and asked her for a lift.
Sure, not a problem.
Then they drove off together out of the university grounds.
Don't move. Open this bloody door. Get up.
He overpowered her, tied her up and forced her into the boot of his car, which was parked nearby. Moodley insists that during the ransom drop-off, Leigh was still alive, incarcerated in the boot of his car. He says he killed her in the field where her body was eventually found.
Told her to undress, which she did. He says that he then gave her a blanket to put around her. So he approached her from behind and put the firearm against her head and fired a bullet into her brain. It takes a very special kind of callousness to be able to do that. And he says that he then pulled her a bit further into the bushes, and where he then fired 3 more shots. He already had her clothing, so the clothing was in his car. And what must have happened is that she saw what's going to happen to her, and she tried to secret away her little ring, so she put it in her pocket. Now, when the body was found, the ring was not on a finger.
There are certain things that he said happened that didn't happen, like killing her at the spot.
A confession on its own does not mean that Moodley is telling the whole truth. He insists he acted alone and killed Leigh where she was found, but the evidence suggests otherwise.
It's very unlikely, in my opinion, that he did this on his own, because it's a fairly to kidnap somebody, to hold them, to make the calls, collect the ransom. It's quite an intensive thing. So it isn't normal that a kidnapper acts alone. In the vast majority of cases, there would be more than one kidnapper.
On the same day of his arrest, Moodley agrees to take the police to the various spots where the crime took place.
Brigadier Beileveld and myself then went to his parents' house, where he also stayed, and you could see that especially the mother realized that something huge was on, because here he is accompanied by the police in handcuffs, and he said he wanted to tell his parents, and he started crying, and he told his mother that he was the one who killed Leigh Matthews. It wasn't a pleasant thing to see, especially with a parent. And she also cried and said, yeah, but this is the girl we prayed for. They were obviously very religious people. We went into his room and he pointed out his firearm to us, which we seized, and also a CD cover, which contained a ring, which belonged to the deceased.
One gets the feeling of this keeping sort of a trophy, this sort of an attachment to this victim. There was a little ring that she had received for her birthday, and this ring featured prominently in the newspapers.
After having shot Leigh, Moodley says he took her clothes and belongings and burned them in a field near his house. Her car keys were still there. Leigh's ring, which they found in his room, was later forensically tested and had been exposed to extreme heat, which means that it must have been burned together with her clothes.
He must have read in the newspaper about this ring, and then he went back there, got his little trophy. Was she a trophy? It's actually scary how her body had been laid out with her beautiful hair to the side. Like a sculpture, like a picture. So he's very much into this keeping and caring sort of the killing.
After Moodley's arrest, more forensic investigations are conducted. The spent cartridges found at Leigh's body are connected to his firearm. A fingerprint lifted from Rob Matthews' car after the drop-off is linked to Donovan Moodley. Leigh's hair is found in his vehicle. And another fingerprint on a lotto ticket found in her car is again a match to Moodley.
Probably what led to Donovan Moodley being caught was his lack of real planning. He's a smart guy, but he made a lot of mistakes, and I think that these were things that Pete Beileveld was able to pick up on through thorough investigation, and he was able to catch him. But he made the sort of mistakes, again, that a professional kidnapper would not be expected to make.
But who is this 23-year-old young man who, on appearances, is your average boy next door?
He's a normal bloke, you know. There's nothing that stands out from this person, absolutely nothing. At that stage, he looked like a normal young man. Nothing conspicuous about him. If you see him in a crowd, you won't remember him.
It didn't make sense. Had a girlfriend, played games. He was also quite a bit of an athlete. He was involved in volleyball and played for some team. was a fit young man and with stars in his eyes, and then possibly decided that one can do all of this and achieve all of what I want to achieve so much faster.
Donovan Moodley evidently did have lavish tastes. He owned 2 cars and an expensive motorbike. He managed to get engaged on a yacht. Was his flashy lifestyle the reason he committed such a monstrous crime? Or was there a more sinister side to his story? Why was Leigh Matthews his target?
If you work on his story, that he asked her for a lift, then the fact that she knew him was important to him.
Bob Nichols believes that his behavior was not that of a typical kidnapper. Moodley's actions pointed to some other underlying motive to which he was not admitting. The police maintain that he was lying about the details and events that surrounded the crime. When the body of Leigh Matthews was found, she'd already been missing for 12 days. The crime scene looked obviously staged. She could not possibly have been killed in the same place as Moodley had claimed.
She was shot 4 times and none of the projectiles could be found. The cartridges were all lying basically together at the body itself. So if you shoot at a person, the cartridges are going to, spent cartridges are going to go into different directions. And it was clear that it was just placed next to the body.
The bullets that were used to kill Leigh are hollow point bullets, which explode inside the body on impact. But the post-mortem showed that 2 bullets had passed through her body. None were found at the scene.
There were a few drops of blood on the scene. There was very little blood inside the body, I think only 400 milliliters or so inside the chest cavity. When you get shot in the brain, there must be at least a liter and a half of blood spurting out. Now, there was not that blood on the scene, and the body had been bled out, basically. So it also showed that she had not been killed there.
The police developed the theory that she had to have been killed elsewhere. And Moodley must have had accomplices.
The body was some distance from the road, so she must have been carried or dragged there. There weren't any drag marks on a body. You would have expected severe post-mortem sunburn. There was no sunburn. Her hair, beautiful long blonde hair, put out to the side, only had something like 2 seeds of grass in there, nothing else.
During the day, the winter temperature in this part of the world is normally around 15 degrees Celsius or more, which is quite warm. But Leigh's body was not in a high state of decomposition when it was discovered. It was almost preserved and still in rigor mortis, which usually dissipates after 36 hours. Something had stopped the rigor mortis from progressing.
So started to develop the theory that she must have been kept in a cool place. There was a very interesting pink mark on the back of her back. And it was first said to me that it must have been left by the one or other blanket. It turned out to be a kind of fungus that only grows here between 0 and 4 degrees Celsius, and that you typically find in a mortuary.
Because we believe that the body was kept refrigerated, he had to go somewhere with it. Bodies are heavy. It's difficult to handle a body on your own all the time.
The investigation team searches the area for mortuaries. They find one owned by a friend of Moodley's. It mysteriously closes down soon after his arrest. More evidence points to a chilling fact that Moodley must have killed Leigh very soon after he kidnapped her.
The medication she had been using would not remain in the body for longer than 24 hours. And that medication was found in her kidneys when the post-mortem was done. So it showed that Within 24 hours after she had last used the medication, she must have died. The medication was still at her home. So she could not have partaken in that medication after she had been kidnapped. Interestingly enough, there was no food in her stomach, indicating that she did not get something to eat, but in my view also indicating that there was never a plan or to let her stay alive. She was going to die from the moment she was taken.
Time of death became very important to the state's theory that Donovan Moodley was lying about the detail. They believed that Leigh had died within 24 hours of her abduction. To prove this, they used a crucial forensic tool: the study of insects.
When we examine a crime scene and a body is present on the crime scene, we look at the indicators, purely at the indicators, which are the insects, which gives us an indication of how long that particular body has been exposed. In other words, the body's been exposed to insects. So we call it the post-mortem interval, or the time of exposure of a body.
Professor Mervyn Mansell has spent a lifetime studying these tiny creatures. He was called in by the investigation team to assist in examining the entomological evidence.
The first thing you look for is maggots, and you always look for the oldest maggots because those are the ones, the eggs that were laid first. They give you the best timeline. And then after we've checked for maggots, we collect all the insects on a crime scene that we can find, all of them, which we analyze later.
Maggots play a role in the decomposition process because they feed off the body.
Despite the fact that there were gunshot wounds, there were no maggots, young maggots or mature maggots, or fly eggs on that particular victim. The absence of insects tells you, especially where there are open wounds, indicates that it's a very fresh crime scene. In other words, the body hasn't been on that crime scene for very long.
Between Leigh's legs, a small spider had been spinning a web. The investigator at the scene manages to catch the spider. It is sent away for analysis and identified as a funnel web spider.
We went to consult Professor Ansie Dippenaar at the Agricultural Research Council, a colleague from the Agricultural Research Council. She's South Africa's expert on spiders. And first of all, Ansie was able to identify the spider, and then she was able to comment upon the state of the web. And what she told us was that the web was in a very, very preliminary stage of development. The spider had only just started spinning a web.
1 year later, they go back to the scene, and using bait, they actually find 3 fly species in the area, despite it being a winter month. They also find a number of spider webs.
We concluded that the body was probably placed on the crime scene the previous afternoon, quite late, because had it been there the previous day, the spider might have found it the previous day, and the insect would certainly have found it the previous day while the temperature was warm, which means that the eggs would have had an opportunity to hatch and develop overnight as well.
The entomological evidence proved unequivocally that Leigh Matthews had been shot at a different location and her body had been moved to this desolate field within 24 hours from the time she was discovered.
Our approach was to get an absolute mass of evidence together, that this man would have little choice but to plead guilty.
A year has passed since Moodley's arrest. He had committed a calculating and devious crime by violently snatching Leigh Matthews from the prime of her life just 1 day after she'd celebrated her 21st birthday. He then killed her in cold blood. He is charged with murder, extortion, and kidnapping. Donovan Moodley pleads guilty, and the trial is to last only 3 days. 2 families each experience the loss of a child, but have to face one another on opposite sides of the courtroom.
I can never forgive Donovan Moodley. You know, you're not talking about an accident or anything like that. You're talking about a cold-hearted killer. But his parents, I want to weep for them.
The Matthews wanted Donovan Moodley to pay the highest price for taking their beloved daughter's life.
Rob Matthews said that in a letter that he read out to court, that he would prefer the death sentence.
I think I've spoken in court and made it very clear as to just exactly how I feel and how my family feels as well. Obviously, we are devastated and we've expressed our emotions, and we are just waiting now for the sentencing.
South African law does not carry the death penalty. Donovan Moodley is sentenced to life imprisonment, which is a minimum of 25 years. He also receives 10 years for extortion and 10 years for kidnapping. These sentences are to run concurrently.
The judge found it to be a callous, heinous crime, deserving the highest sentence. And in his judgment, he also highlighted the role that greed played in this case. Pleading guilty actually meant nothing in this matter, because it doesn't necessarily show remorse. You can be sorry that you're caught out, or you can really have genuine remorse. And he was still lying. So where's the remorse? No remorse.
Because Moodley pleaded guilty, he escaped cross-examination. Outside the courtroom, Brigadier Piet Beleveld cannot hide his frustration.
It's a pity I couldn't testify.
He felt robbed of the opportunity to take the stand and to be able to explore more of the evidence. He firmly believed other people were involved. Donovan Moodley was protecting someone. The motive for committing this crime was not clear-cut.
Do you think Donovan is remorseful?
I noticed that he had a bit of tears in the accused box while his dad was testifying. That's all I want to say about that. Thank you.
Do you think that's remorseful?
I don't know. I don't know.
Crocodile tears.
No, don't get me wrong. I'm not here to judge him. Please, no, I'm not. I'm just an officer, police officer, investigating officer.
Thank you so much.
Hello?
He originally asked for a ransom of 300,000 rand, but went down from 300,000 to 50,000 within a question of minutes.
50,000 will do.
So it could not have been all about the money.
I don't think that Donovan Moodley would have spared Leigh's life if they'd paid the full amount, because I don't think that that's the reason why she was killed. I think the reason why she was killed most likely was the fact that she knew her kidnapper.
Was it really kidnapping? Was the intent to kidnap and trade for money, actually? Or was it a different motive? For actually just killing? There are many of these actions which we can't answer.
How many shots with this hollow point ammunition do you need to kill a person? Especially if you fired a shot right into the brain. He still fired 3 further shots. One from very close into the right of the neck and twice still into a chest, showing anger, I would think.
Why then shoot those other shots? It's overkill. It just seems unnecessary. Again, it seems like someone who doesn't quite have a grip on things, who's angry or frustrated.
Was it a crime of passion or anger? Or was it simply a crime of greed? Did Donovan Moodley act alone, or were there co-conspirators? Still, the Matthews family has to face life without Leigh.
I could chat to her, I could talk to her about anything. enjoyed cooking, and she'd just share a glass of wine with me and just a very gentle child.
Donovan Moodley appealed his life sentence twice. He claims he was coerced into confessing.
The confession, which is written by Captain Van Aert. On close inspection of the confession, one can clearly see a flowing confession was never given as alleged, but questions are being asked. Where I could not answer was because I simply got stuck trying to fabricate a one-man story. Bailiff would suggest an answer, and I would say yes.
Both times his appeal was denied.
He's still lying about where he actually killed her. He's still lying about where she had been kept. He's still lying about how she got to that scene where her body was found.